John McFee formed San Francisco-based band Clover in the 60s. Their first self-titled album, Unfantasy, came out in 1970. Several years later, they came to realize some key people in the UK pub rock scene were big fans of their music. Nick Lowe, Brinsley Schwarz, and also drummer Pete Thomas, who called Clover to see if they would audition for the up-and-coming Declan MacManus, who would soon change his name to Elvis Costello. Clover got the gig, backing Elvis on My Aim Is True, and John McFee's great guitar work is what you hear on all the classic tracks like Alison and The Angels Wanna Wear My Red Shoes. John also played steel guitar on Van Morrison's Tupelo Honey and St. Dominic's Preview. The long list of artists he's contributed guitar, pedal steel, and vocals for includes Carlene Carter, Nick Lowe, Emmylou Harris, The Grateful Dead, and Boz Scaggs. In 1979, John McFee was asked to join the Doobie Brothers, replacing Jeff Baxter. He also formed Southern Pacific with Keith Knudsen of the Doobies and Stu Cook of Creedence. In the 90s, that trio became Jackdawg. The release of their fantastic self-titled album was delayed due to the death of their manager. A CD release was temporarily available in 2009, but the album was out of print for years. That is, until now. Stay tuned for my talk with singer, songwriter, guitarist, record producer, and multi-instrumentalist, John McFee. You're listening to Frets with DJ Faye. No lessons, no technique info. I just talk to people who play guitar. Stay tuned. John McFee, thanks so much for doing this.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
What part of California are you in? I think you're originally from Santa Cruz, right?
Yeah, I'm from Santa Cruz originally, but I've kind of lived all over the state. But I've been here where I am now. I've lived in the same house for over 45 years now.
Oh, wow.
And it's in Santa Barbara County in the Santa Ynez Valley.
Oh, nice. Well, in your early life, before you got to the age where you started playing in bands and all that, were there any particular bands or types of music you were drawn to, maybe even when you were a kid?
Well, growing up, my dad, I grew up in this California culture of the oil field culture of, my dad was an oil field roughneck by day, but he also played music. He was a musician too.
Oh, wow.
So he had me playing ukulele before I could walk, So I grew up playing, and until the Beatles came out, all I ever heard or played was country music. That was what my dad liked, and that's what I was exposed to. And that's my roots, and that's some of my favorite stuff still, But so that's my strongest influences probably in the early years of developing as a musician were definitely country.
Yeah, the ukulele was the first stringed instrument I grabbed. My parents had a ukulele that I still have here, and that was the first time I plunked around or anything when I was little. So
yeah, it's a good starting point.
Yeah. Well, fast forwarding too, like when Clover was formed, weren't you still in your teens at that point?
Yes. Yeah, I was. Like I said, I started young. So when the Beatles came out, it was like, hey, everybody wanted to have a band. And hey, that McFee kid, he already knows how to play. Let's get him in our band. So that's kind of how I got started being, exposed to rock and roll and other styles, blues and jazz and other things too. So that that was good for me, I think. But I started playing little bands, and then the next thing I knew, I ended up really hitting it off with the guys in Clover. We formed a bond and a band and a bond. And, that was a project I really believed in and stuck with for quite a while, but I started being heard by other players and being hired starting at a pretty early age as well, still a teenager, for session work. And so I ended up doing a lot of session work through the years as well. So,
Yeah, I was going to say, looking through your discography and all the people and bands you played with, it's just kind of, it's incredible. But yeah, it's...
Yeah, when I look at it, sometimes it surprises me. I'm like, what? I did that?
And we'll get to this too, but I know guitar is not the only instrument you play. But, well, when I was in my late teens, I discovered that the local library had a lot of really great albums I could borrow. I'm still living at home with my parents. And I discovered like Brinsley Schwarz albums, and that was like my introduction to Nick Lowe. But one day I'm flipping through the vinyl bins at our local library, and I discovered My Aim Is True. And even just that album cover, like, kind of grabbed me, like, what is this?
Right.
I was really young, and that album got me so hooked on Elvis Costello that I bought everything he would release for years. And because, when you're really fixated on a band or a musician, I wanted to know everything about him. I knew his real name, Declan MacManus and all that, where he was from. And I knew, but I also knew on that first album that he was backed by Clover and not the Attractions.
Right.
But even knowing that, it was quite a while that I realized you were not only the guitarist, but you played like lead guitar on the classic Alison and Angels Want to Wear My Red Shoes, like such classic, iconic songs that, like I said, I have to confess, it was years before I was like, oh, that wasn't, that was actually John McFee.
I thought it was pretty funny. There have been moments when I played live with Elvis, when we play Alison, and when we're done, he says to the audience, "You didn't think I played all that, did you?" It's pretty funny. He's got a good sense of humor about it as well. But yeah, that was really a fortunate little happenstance in my life. I feel really lucky that to have hooked up with Nick Lowe and Elvis and all that.
Yeah.
It's an important relationship in my life, that whole thing. So,
well, you're right that he has a great sense of humor. I think I figured out that I've seen Elvis Costello in concert more than any other person I've seen in concert over the years, and I just love his banter between songs and everything is so great.
Yeah, he's really a great guy, very interesting and obviously intelligent. So it's always he's worth listening to in many ways.
Well, Nick Lowe, who I discovered when I got into Brinsley Schwarz, produced My Aim Is True, and I believe it was mostly recorded kind of live in the studio with maybe vocals overdub, but you guys kind of played a lot of that just in the studio, right?
Almost all of it is live.
Yeah.
And including the lead vocals. Some of those lead vocals Elvis was singing in the studio with the band while we were playing, the vocals that made it to the final product. Nick, as far as my playing, not one note is punched in. It's all completely live, played with the drums and bass and everything, and keyboards as we're tracking. And Elvis was playing rhythm and singing. It's more of a live album than anything's been called a live album in probably 30 or 40 years.
That's so cool.
And that was, I credit Nick for having the vision there of like, hey, no, I want to keep it real. And I was begging him to let me redo things, and he says, no, it feels good. And he's so right. Once I got away from it for a week, even, I'm going, it does feel good,
Hey, I want to talk about Plug. Plug makes it easy for you to purchase the personal technology you need at 40 to 70% off retail pricing. What can you get from Plug? Certified pre-owned devices including iPhones, Androids, AirPods, Macs, smartwatches, accessories, and more. I originally didn't even want an Apple Watch, but I got one from Plug and I love it. I wear it every day. Your purchase is backed by their unmatched 1-year warranty and 30-day money-back guarantee. One more very cool thing, Plug is dedicated to helping reduce e-waste around the globe. To date, Plug has helped save over 1 million devices from reaching landfills, and they're looking to double that number by 2025. Link to Plug Tech from the show notes, and check out all the great deals and savings on certified pre-owned devices. Plug Electronics. Check it out. Well, you appeared on several more Elvis Costello albums over the years, and also appeared on Nick Lowe's Jesus of Cool. Also, a lot of people know that as pure pop for now people, but you played the lead on
both great titles.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Huge Nick Lowe fan as well. So no, I think you played on Tonight on that album.
Yeah, I played on. I guess I'm kind of not totally sure on exactly which tracks.
Oh.
there was a lot going on back then. But I remember one of the first ones. Nick, he was trying to get out of a record deal at one point, and so he recorded a song about the Bay City Rollers,
Oh.
and it went to like #1 in Japan or something.
Wow.
So it was a failure for getting him out of his record deal. But I played on his follow-up of that, which was what was it called? Rollers. One of them was called Bay City Rollers We Love. I think it was Bay City Rollers We Love You is the one I played. The first one was called Roller Show.
Wow. And then maybe around that same period, you played on Radio Sweetheart by Elvis Costello.
That was actually the first track we cut on the My Aim Is True sessions.
Oh, really? Okay, so that was recorded early, but included later. That's great.
Yeah. And when we, when you talk about Brinsley Schwarz, I don't know if you know this, association with my band Clover. The Clover thing was a lot of the reason we ended up moving to England, and that's how I first met Nick Lowe, and that whole thing started. But Brinsley Schwarz even had a song that Clover was in the lyrics.
Had a song, the lyric,
yeah. Gonna saddle up and ride away to them hills where Clover played. So they were Clover fans, and that's how we ended up backing Elvis on the My Aim Is True project. Elvis was a fan. He had been performing Clover songs in his live concerts when he was still Declan MacManus.
That's great. Yeah, I was very thrilled. I ended up talking to Brinsley Schwarz. I think it was early last year. He was really great.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we did.
That's cool.
An international call. Yeah, and he was great to talk to. Been just such a hero of mine since like I said, when I was a teen. Well, over the years, you were getting a lot of work, as you mentioned, as a session musician, providing vocals for a lot of bands and artists, and even producing at times. Another of your talents is engineering. At what point did you get into that aspect, or when did you have time to learn that with all the work you were getting?
Well, actually, it really happened because as I started doing session work, pretty quickly I noticed I was going, why do I sound better? Why do I sound, I'm playing through the same gear, I'm the same player. Why does my stuff sound better when I record this studio with this engineer and stuff like that? I said, it's got to be something they're doing. So I started paying attention to the engineering. And that's kind of how it all started. I early on, and I always, from the earliest stage, and before very many artists really even had their own studios, I had this idea in my head. I want to have my own studio so I can control this stuff and have more freedom.
Sure.
So I just saw a lot of pluses to educating myself and learning how to do the recording part and what goes into it and what works and what doesn't and so forth, and there's a lot to it. So I'm still trying to learn,
Well, I was into so many things when I was young, sounds like you were too, but so many types of music and so many bands. I was way into Steely Dan and, of course, way into Skunk Baxter. And in the late 70s, Skunk left the Doobie Brothers. I think it was in the late 70s. And about that time, you joined the band after Skunk was out, playing guitar and providing vocals on their album, One Step Closer.
Right. Yeah, that's when Jeff left. That's when it was right when Clover... when we moved to England, it was because we had done some records we'd signed to the Fantasy label in the Bay Area back in the 60s and did 2 albums for Fantasy that never really did anything. And we just, and then after that deal expired, we were always on the verge of the inception of the beginning of starting to get a new record deal, but never quite getting one, And at a certain point, we got a phone call out of the blue from this guy with a British accent. He says, I'm a drummer. I'm over here playing with John Stewart, and I'm just a fan of the records you guys did on Fantasy. I'd love to meet you. And Huey Lewis and Alex Call and I lived in a house together in Mill Valley up in Marin County. And he was so nice. He said, I got your number from a bloke down here at the Old Mill Tavern, and I'd love to meet you. So we told him how to get to our house. He came And that's when and he said, it's not just me. There are a bunch of musicians in Britain that think you guys are the best. And we were in shock because we didn't even know the records had been released anywhere outside of the States, and they did nothing in the States. So this was a big surprise to us. He says, as a matter of fact, I have some friends that have the #1 album in the UK right now. They're going to be playing at Winterland next week. It was okay if I pass your information on to them. We said, sure. Well, that's how we met Nick Lowe. Because
Okay.
Nick was traveling. The group was Dr. Feelgood.
Yeah.
And so we met those guys, and Nick was traveling with them, and they were being tour managed by a guy named Andrew Jakeman, who is also known as Jake Riviera.
Right.
And Jake said, look, if I can get you, I'm starting a management company with an Irish bloke named Dave Robinson. We can get you guys a record deal. Would you be willing to relocate to the UK and let us manage you? So that's how we ended up moving to the UK and doing all that stuff. And by the way, the drummer that called us out of the blue was Pete Thomas.
Oh, wow. Of the Thomas Brothers, yeah.
Of the Attractions, and still playing with Elvis Costello. Although he wasn't the drummer on the first album, but he was he changed my life more than any other person, I think, ever, with that little phone call out of the blue. But that's how we started out, that's how it came to pass. Anyway, when we moved, at a certain point, our record deal ran out, and Dave and Jake were breaking up their management thing, and they were selling the Stiff Records products, and they were arguing over who got to manage what artist. So we moved back to the States, but we were in limbo because we couldn't proceed till things were resolved. And that was at the point when Jeff Baxter left the Doobies. And I found out kind of sideways that they were looking for a new guitarist and I knew some of the guys, and they were going to ask me, but I turned down so many offers. They had decided, well, McFee would never take it. She's so loyal to Clover, but I couldn't do anything with Clover at the time. And my son had just been born. So I called up Keith Knudsen and said, hey, if you guys are interested, I'm willing to give it a shot. I'll come and audition. So that's how it came to pass that I replaced Jeff. I went and auditioned, and they said, if you want it, you got it, on the day I auditioned. And that's how it all started with the Doobies.
Wow.
Teachers used to say, every year I spent in the 11th grade, I had to see all that I could be, graduated straight into the infantry, love came along, baby, it was wrong.
Hey, Dave, how long have you been a Euclid Records customer?
Believe it or not, about 30 years.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I used to go there in the late 90s.
That's amazing. Well, you know what? 2026 is our 45th anniversary in St. Louis, and our New Orleans store is turning 15.
The NOLA store is cool, but the St. Louis store has 2 floors of used and new vinyl and CDs.
And every genre you can think of. You can shop in the store 7 days a week or on the website 24/7. We have our own shipping department, so anything you buy from us is lovingly mailed out by us.
When I buy from the website, I use the free local pickup option.
Yes, and we've also done some special orders for you. We do whatever it takes to get music in your hands. One thing, though, that you haven't done with us is sell your collection. We're always buying vinyl and CDs and cassettes for cash or trade. We even travel to someone who has over 1,000 titles in their collection.
So how does one partake in the Euclid Records experience?
Well, our St. Louis store is at 19 North Court Avenue in Webster Groves. You can check out our website, euclidrecords.com, every day to see the latest new and used arrivals, plus events. We share that on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook as well. And remember, we ship worldwide, so no matter where a Frets listener is, there's Euclid Records.
Hi, this is John McFee of the Doobie Brothers and Jackdawg, and you're listening to Frets with DJ Faye.
Well, before I got distracted, when you mentioned fantasy, I kind of flashed on. I've still got a little stack, at least a few 45 records on fantasy Creedence stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Creedence Clearwater Revival was a
Right.
huge. I love those guys, and I know I've got a handful of those 45s right here.
Yeah, they were great. We were label mates, but we were also friends, and we used to do things together. The two bands. I think we had a special bond with Creedence because in the Bay Area, in a lot of ways, we were. I don't know if we were. I still go so far as to say we're the only ones, but we were some of the only groups that were not trying to be psychedelic, particularly at all. We were more roots oriented, I should say. It's really what it was about. So we appreciated that, what each other were doing in terms of like trying to be true to certain musical roots and traditions and so forth.
Right. You mentioned Keith Knudsen. I know Keith passed away quite a while back, right?
Yeah, it's been a while now. Yeah.
But you and Keith formed Southern Pacific, along with, speaking of Creedence, with Stu Cook on bass. Was that, I guess that was shortly after all this? I lose track of the chronology because you were involved in so many things.
Yeah, well, when I joined the Doobies in the late 70s, the band broke up by like 83.
Right.
And so after that, Keith and I, we'd been doing a lot of country sessions, and Tim Goodman, who was the original lead singer in what became Southern Pacific, was really the guy that pushed for it, says, why don't we do some stuff of our own? We're backing up all these other artists. Let's do some country stuff of our own. And for me, the idea was very attractive because, like I say, that's my roots, because it's country music. So I liked the idea, and the next thing we knew, we got signed to Warner Brothers Nashville and just started putting records out. Little side note you might find interesting is that when Southern Pacific was first forming, we weren't called Southern Pacific for one thing. We were calling ourselves the Tex Pistols.
Oh, I love that.
And we had to change. We got threatened to be sued by Sex Pistols manager. Malcolm McLaren or whatever his name was. Anyway, so we had to change our name. But I wasn't playing guitar. I was playing pedal steel and violin. And the guitar player, the original guitar player, was James Burton.
Oh man!
And when James left, Albert Lee was there for a minute. And then when Albert had got, those guys had other gigs pulling them away from this kind of risky venture of starting a new band. So by the time we were really signing, I had taken over on guitar and steel and violin. So anyway, but it all evolved out of doing country sessions for other artists. So,
the Rocky Erickson tribute album, Where the Pyramid Meets the Eye, featured one of Southern Pacific's with their cover of "It's a Cold Night for Alligators."
Yeah. Well, that was towards the end of Southern Pacific when we were approached to do that, and Keith and Stu and I, we did that one. We called it Southern Pacific, but it was really, we did it without Kurt Howell, not because we didn't want Kurt there, but because he was living in Nashville, and Keith and Stu and I were living in California, Southern California area. So it was easier for us to get together. So we cracked that, and then and the Rocky Erickson connection was really Stu, because Stu had produced some of Rocky's stuff back in the day.
Wow.
And so that's kind of how we got drawn into cutting the track and doing it. And but it's also featured on our new Jackdawg release.
Yeah. Well, in the 90s, I guess it was, you and Keith and Stu became Jackdawg and released that really great self-titled album. Tell me a bit of how that all came to be, which I know you just led into that, but was it basically that you wanted, the band to become, have a new name, have maybe even a different sound than Southern Pacific?
I wish I could say we had a real plan as such. But it was more just, Southern Pacific was starting to wind down for various reasons. Oddly enough, it seems to be a recurring theme at points in my life that management issues, just kind of intrude upon the processes of trying to do the music. And so we were kind of we were in a point of somewhat limbo at Southern Pacific. And like I say, Keith and Stu and I lived in relative proximity to each other. So we said, well, let's just fool around with something else for a while, it wasn't like this big giant plan, but it was like, well, we've been doing the Southern Pacific, country oriented thing, but we all have rock backgrounds too. Let's fool around with some rock for a while. So that's how it started. And we just started cutting tracks, writing songs together and recording them here at my studio, and where we'd cut a lot of the Southern Pacific stuff, and also, by the way, where we cut quite a bit of Doobie Brothers stuff. But we were just having fun and experimenting, and if there was a plan, it was to not have a plan, more or less, as far as let's not restrict it stylistically. Let's just do whatever feels like it's fun, and so it ended up being pretty rock,
Very much so. I love the sound of it. And it consisted of mostly originals, but you did include a very cool and interesting take on Wild Night by Van Morrison. Tupelo Honey is another album I had for years before learning that you played pedal steel on that.
Yeah, I did 2 albums with Van back in that era, Tupelo Honey and St. Dominic's Review.
Oh, right.
And, that was a really fortunate, circumstance for me too, to get to play with a guy that I kind of idolized, really, and become friends with him. And he was always so nice to me. And anyway, when we were fooling around with tracks with what became Jackdawg, I don't even remember who suggested that we cut Wild Night, but we started fooling around with it. And again, the last thing we wanted to do was try to copy the version that I'd played on with Van, the arrangement. So we just went pretty far away from the original arrangement. But there again, we were just, experimenting and having fun.
It's very cool.
Thank you.
Stay tuned. We'll be right back. That's Eric Roscoe Amble from his classic album Roscoe's Gang, produced by Eric, along with Lou Whitney, and featuring Ron Rongo Gremp, Joe Terry, and D. Clinton Thompson, all former members of the Morels. I hope you'll listen to my 2-part interview with Roscoe in Season 1 of Frets with DJ Faye.
That was the hottest gig in town, the Morels gig. And there was a sign, and Rongo was at the door, and there was a sign that said, "Donnie's sick, the Morels can't play tonight, but Lou has sent the Del Lords from New York City." And really, for our band, that made St. Louis became a second home almost for us, throughout the band's existence.
Eric Roscoe Amble from Season 1 of Frets. Well, there were some obstacles to getting the album released, which had to be incredibly frustrating. But now, after all these years, Jackdawg has officially been released on vinyl, CD, as well as digital. And it is, as I mentioned, it's such a great album. I love it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it went through, as I say, we really didn't have any plan when we were coming up with the music, other than just to finding music we liked and had fun doing. And it's at a certain point when we realized we've got at least an album's worth of material here. Maybe we should see if anybody's interested, any record labels. And that was in the days when, back in the 90s, you kind of had to have a record label, really. So we were going to proceed to try to do that, and we were talking about, well, who can we have shop it? And we probably should have a manager or somebody that knows the business to do this, because we're just musicians. And so I suggested Joe Gottfried, who was a gentleman that I knew from Clover days. At one point, we had signed a production agreement with Joe Gottfried, and Joe was the founder and owner of Sound City Studios in the LA area, one of the greatest studios ever. Fantastic studio. So many great records have been made there. But we had worked with Joe Gottfried, and I always liked Joe, and he was I considered him to be one of the, maybe somewhat rare, ethical and honest and people in the music business that I would feel good about working with on something like the Jackdawg project and getting it out to the public. So we approached Joe to see if he was interested, and he was. So he was going to do it, and we were having talks and meetings, and we had trying to finalize the mixes or the music. And all of a sudden, Joe passed away. And that really took some momentum out of us. And it happened right at a time, too, when Keith and I were kind of being approached and drawn back into the Doobie Brothers. And Stu and Doug Clifford were talking about what turned into the Creedence Clearwater Revisited project, I think. And so for whatever reason, we kind of the Jackdawg music just kind of sat there for a number of years. Because we got sidetracked with all these other, back into these other projects. And then at a certain point, a guy named Joey Steck had a company called Sonic Past Music, and he had somehow procured the rights to some of the recordings we had done that Clover had done when we were under contract to Joe Gottfried, some tracks we cut at Sound City Studios. And he was going to release them. So he contacted me, and, I ended up being involved with trying to get that stuff prepped and out on Joey's label, Sonic Past Music. And we were doing this Clover, and it got released. It's called Clover, the Sound City Sessions, I believe. And while we were doing it, Joey said, "Have you got any other stuff that you've done that's never been released that you think, you might want to get out there to the public?" So that's how the original Jackdawg release happened with Joey. But it never really got off the ground. His company was going through some changes at the time, and it did get released, but it was kind of like not particularly promoted, or it was like kind of an unknown release, a secret release.
Yeah, so it went out of print for a long time.
Yeah, and so all these years later, now with Liberty Hall, we've got a new release of Jackdawg. They somehow, Stu actually was the one who was in touch with the label that became interested in it. So now here it's become a reality. Here it is.
That's so great. Well, and you continue to tour with the Doobie Brothers. I believe there's a Lincoln, California show up in early December.
Yes, that'll be the last show of the year. Is a show up there in Northern California. Mm-hmm.
I watch CBS Sunday Morning every week, and I did really enjoy the Doobie Brothers segment. When they were talking about songwriting, you said, I think this is right, the only thing harder than writing lyrics is putting words to music. So
yes, that's one I came up with a while ago. I use it on occasion.
That's great. Well, John McFee, it was so great to be able to talk with you.
All right. Well, thanks for taking the time with me. And maybe I'll get to see you in person one of these days.
That would be fantastic. Thanks, John.
All right. Well, thank you again. Bye-bye.
See you. The Liberation Hall release of Jackdawg is available now. You can find a link in today's show notes. The Doobie Brothers play the venue at Thunder Valley in Lincoln, California on December 5th. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned.
It's a cold night for alligators. It's a cold night for dogs. The dogs choke on their barking when they see alligator persons in the bog and fog.
Did you dig this chat? Then check out past episodes. Please subscribe, tell 2 friends, and follow Frets on Instagram and YouTube. And leave a glowing review wherever you're hearing this episode.
I'm the one that at some point might fumble over my words, and if I do, I'll just say, "Hey, I want to start that again." But we can figure that out.
Yeah, we can take turns.
Yeah.